Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have you. I can't wait for us to kind of dive into our niche topic because not only is it something that I'm super passionate about, but I think is worthwhile diving into and kind of bringing a little bit more to our listeners. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. But what I would love for you to do to start is could you share with our listeners what you're currently doing in your practice?
Yeah, so I got some exciting things going on, and it's hard to pick one project at a time. I'm one of those people who picks many things, which I'm working on. But in my practice, I primarily work with women, typically aged 25 to 35, but I, of course, go outside of those ages too. And my passion is to help women use all forms of themselves. I like to call it the queendom, and that is their mind, body, spirit, and lifestyle. So I feel like in wellness, you cannot forget one of those items when you're on a journey, because if you only work on the body, which I feel like we used to do in the past with crash dieting and, that whole depiction of women trying to be skinny, we didn't work on the mind. And that really caused for a negative mindset to develop in our generation of women. So I try to work on all of those assets with my clients, and I'm hoping to help them reach optimal wellness on their journey. And I tend to use my big things that I like to use is detoxification rituals, because I do think you have to clear everything out to make room for the optimal nutrients after that. And then I also like to mix in the other functional medicine rituals with positive psychology. That's where I bring the mindfulness in. So we work a lot with even, I call it generational leftovers, those stories that were left over from our parents or our grandparents that now it's time to let go of. And I like to empower my clients to say, you are the ones that get to stop it at this point. So then your following generation doesn't have to keep up with just those habits and those stories that maybe served our parents, but don't serve us any longer. So I like to use the positive psychology just to work them through the stages of change and make sure they're ready, as well as their body is ready to move forward on the wellness journey. So I try to keep the environment very safe, efficient, but also enjoyable.
Yes. Yeah. I think so important, especially with women, because I think our kind of programming tends to be a little bit deeper. I think men have kind of just their one, there's toxic masculinity and like, can they process emotions or can they not? Right. And then I think women have like this subset of so many other things that generationally can kind of be passed down. And if we become mothers or, we're sisters or friends, it can affect other relationships. And like you said, kind of continue down the line. So I love that generational leftover.
Throw it out, get it out of the fridge, I say.
Exactly. It's spoiled.
Yes.
No, we're not eating that anymore. So have you always been doing some form of like wellness? I know you're IHP certified. Have you always been doing some sort of wellness type of work? What were you doing before this?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. Throughout my life, I've always kind of made decisions based on my intuition, even when I was a child. So to others, that might look like a pretty chaotic life, but to me, it's a very fulfilling life. So I actually went to school for fashion merchandising because I don't know why they tell us to pick a major at 18, but they shouldn't. So I went for fashion merchandising, realized that the fashion industry was way too stressful for me. And I think that was also my body and my intuition telling me that I was not equipped for that type of industry. And so I ended up stopping with fashion. And then I went to a life coach myself, which was kind of the universe sending me a sign. In the first session, I realized, oh, I have been doing this my whole life because I've always been that person that people come to for advice or just to work through anything that they're going through in their life. And so went through the Beautiful You Coaching Academy and became a life coach. And that was in 2016, and worked with a lot of different clients. I had women who were going through more of the empty nesting at one point. And then I also worked with women who are graduating college and entering the adult world. And I really loved it. But for my own life, I was going through a lot of things in my body through my 20s. So I was coming out of my party stages of being in college, and I realized that all the symptoms I was having was not going away. So I had IBS. I had been on birth control for 12 years. So I got off that, and I was having all kinds of hormonal issues, low energy, brain fog. And I also didn't have a sense of smell or taste for 2 years. And so after going to an allergy doctor and spending a lot of money, the universe sent me a sign of functional medicine. I heard about Dr. Cabral, and I started listening to him and realized that this could be something that could actually give me answers. Because growing up, I kind of knew that when doctors talked to me, they were kind of talking down to me as a woman. They were telling me, I remember going to a doctor when I was younger saying I couldn't sleep, and they blamed it on anxiety and depression. And I remember even having stomach issues when I was younger, and it was based on anxiety and depression. And so it was always blaming my mind on my symptoms, which I thought was a little messed up. But when you're a kid, you don't know to say no to a doctor. So when I got older and heard about functional medicine and listened to the wisdom of Dr. Cabral, I knew that there were other options out there for me. And so I went through his 7-day detox. And on day 3, I got my sense of smell back. And it was the best day, even though it was broccoli, and broccoli doesn't smell the best, but I was crying in the kitchen. And from that day, I realized that as a woman, if I can figure out how my body can work optimally and try to first figure out issues naturally, it gives you this sense of power that's like nothing else. And so after that day, even on goals that weren't wellness, like my goals for career or relationship, I just all of a sudden started working on them so easily because I had this power knowing that I had control over my body and I had knowledge over my body. So it was this weird body and mind connection that was around 25, and I was blown away. And I knew that I had to bring that connection to my clients because as a life coach, I was doing okay in my business, but I feel like my clients weren't leaving with the results I wanted them to. And they had a lot of excuses, which brought shame because women, I feel like, harbor a lot of guilt and shame. And so when they didn't finish their action steps, I could sense and feel that guilt, and that stopped them on their journeys a lot of time. And then after that, it was just talk. Like, I feel like we were just talking back and forth. We weren't making moves. So as soon as I felt the power of optimal wellness, I decided that I needed to add that to my practice too, because none of my clients could reach their goals, whether it be wellness or not, if their body wasn't optimally ready. I always use the phrase, if you want to take a broken down car on a road trip, it's not going to get you there. And so our body's the same thing. So I went through IHP level 1 and 2 and just started bringing in that functional medicine. It was difficult in the beginning because I had to weave in life coaching with functional medicine. But then, like I said before, the universe has its way. And I ended up just finishing up with FMC, which is the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. And they are really good about introducing functional medicine and positive psychology together. And that was the moment I realized that is why I did life coaching first. And then I did IHP next, and then FMC third. It was like the components had to be 1 and then 2, and then bring it all together with both of them. So that is how I'm where I'm at today and why I include the mind, body, and spirit when it comes to coaching so that I don't miss any points. And then I'm currently about to take my board test, the national board test in October, because I know that the wellness industry is changing and it's a great thing because functional medicine is starting to become mainstream. And I'm hoping that insurance will pay for that someday, because that's the one thing that stops clients from working with me a lot of times is the money. And I would like to work with women from all paths and all ages. I'm especially passionate about working with women still who are entering the adult world, so kind of younger. And so if their insurance could pay for that as it should, to have a health coach on their wellness team at 18, I mean, that would change so many things in our world, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, which we're going to elaborate a little bit on that. So I'm going to circle back to that in just a second, but I wanted to highlight kind of a part of everything that you said, which is, essentially women. I think it's so common that everything is correlated to either, and this is especially true when it's male doctors, right?
Yes.
It's either like, our cycles, but usually like our minds. Like we're just emotional beings. And like, if you can just get grips of your emotions, right? Like everything will be better. You'll sleep better, just chill out, stop being so emotional, right? But
Right.
part of empowering women to understand that connection comes hormonal education and the ebbs and flows of how that plays into okay, maybe it is an emotional component, right? Maybe you are up worrying and that's why you can't sleep, right? Sure.
Right.
Maybe the doctor's right. But still, even if that were the case, so what about that though, physiologically, right, could be driving it? And it sounds like so much of your passion is empowering women with the knowledge and giving them kind of like that in-depth understanding of what's going on with their body. And it's interesting that, your passion's with the age group that it's with, or you believe that it would be so beneficial for 18, 19, 20, to 25-year-olds to have way more really hand-holding and support about what's going on, because that is a pivotal moment in hormones, in life changes, right? Like maybe you're done with college and you're moving back in with your parents, or maybe, you have just trashed your body for 4 years at school and you've been on birth control because like that's what everybody tells you should do if you're going to be sexually active. And that's, kind of ruined, physiologically some things for you. And most of those girls just end up going back to their doctor and kind of getting more of the same. So I would love for you to elaborate on what your kind of what your approach is to empowering and bringing like the knowledge to clients, and what your goal is as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think every coach has, a different system that they work with. So I actually created a system called the Rule Formula, and it's based on helping a woman start ruling their life. I call women queens. Might be goofy, but I feel like we are, and we deserve that title. And so with the Rule Formula, it is client focused. So I would never try to give my opinion or the knowledge without them being ready for it, because I don't think we take it if we're not ready for it. I think back to when even my mom or an adult tried to tell me something about my body and I was just not going to hear it then. So they have to be ready. So with the Rule Formula, the first part of that is releasing any old stories. And that has to do with, like I said before, the generational leftovers, but it also has to do with detoxification, because I really think that when our systems are overloaded, I know Dr. Cabral, talks about the rain barrel being overloaded or filled up. And I kind of see that too, where if we are filled with toxins in our mind and our body, there's actually no way that we can start talking about the knowledge of the body and how it can work, because there's just so much noise going on. So there's a lot of noise from society still at the very beginning of coaching. There's a lot of noise from their family and friends. And then they're also their inner mean girl telling them they can't do this, their body can't do this. So when I first start working with the client, I like to, if the client is willing, obviously, if they're ready for a different stage, we move on to a different stage. But I would like for them to clear as much of the toxins out of their mind and body as possible. And we do that through whatever form of detoxification they want. Maybe it's Dr. Cabral's detoxification, or maybe it's the detox food plan or an elimination diet. So we can figure out what's triggering them. I have my toolbox that I let them decide how that looks for them. And then we do the mind part. And that's where we're going to talk about, how they used to eat growing up. What are some family traditions around food or movement that maybe we need to get rid of or alter for them as a woman now? So I love this part because it's like those aha moments where a client doesn't realize something that was filling their queendom or their space that needed to go out. And so it's kind of like the cleanup shop time. Once we get through that phase and we don't get fully through it in the beginning, we just start to, then I can move on to the next phase, which is unleash your dream life scenario. Because I feel like you need a vision. And this is also kind of with motivational interviewing. I don't know if other coaches have seen that, but if they haven't, they should look it up. Motivational interviewing and positive psychology, with all that, they talk about you have to have a well life vision. I call it the dream life scenario. And it's like when you're on that journey or you're on that road trip, you need a billboard to drive towards. So this is a fun stage because we get to kind of co-create this dream life scenario together. I ask them, where do you want to be in a year? But we act as if they're already there. And so they get to visualize anything. I say it is like, think about when you were a child and you played make-believe, and we would say, the most ridiculous stuff. But now as an adult, we act like none of that can come true, but it can. And so in this moment, I try to get them more into that childlike mindset, and we come up with a vision that sounds like a dream, but it can be reality. And we go through how they want to feel. How does their body look? How does their mind on a daily basis feel? How's their relationships? How's their environment? We plan that together. And then after that, we have L, which is lighten your barrier load. So there's always things that are going to pop up in life. And there's no way going through life not having them. So I let clients know that, and I let them know it's okay. It happens to all of us. So to make that road less bumpy, or the bumps, less huge, where it's going to bump them off their journey, we go through the barriers that could pop up. And this is when I tap into their intuition and that wisdom that I know that they have. As women, our wisdom, I feel like, gets pushed down throughout our years, especially in the teenage years. And we are told we don't know, and we don't know what's best for us. And I think there's some ancestral wisdom that we were born with, but gets squashed. And so I like to bring that wisdom out in the third part of my formula and say, let's dig deep. And I ask them, what has worked in the past for you, on these types of goals? Or can you just think of any creative solutions? This is where we bring in character strengths. What strengths do they already have right now? And that's another tip I'd give coaches. If you don't know the character strengths test, you should go read about that, because that's a big one for clients. If you can know what their top character strengths are and then emphasize those in this phase, it's going to be amazing. They love to hear that, they have confidence already, or they have creativity, or they have the character strength of self-discipline. And so we use those character strengths in the L part of the formula to come up with some creative solutions, write them down. So when those barriers pop up or those bumps in the road pop up, they can deal with them so easy, and then they get back on their journey. And that is how the power keeps getting bigger and bigger as they go through the formula. And then E is for engage feminine power. And this is kind of what I talked about before. This is a lot where the knowledge comes into play. This is at the point where they're open to the knowledge that functional medicine can give them. And this is where they start seeing the changes in their body and their mind on a daily basis. And I can see it from them, but they can feel it themselves. They'll come to the session so pumped up, they'll have a bright aura around them, and I'll know that they have engaged that power that they were born with that was just stifled most of their life. So we kind of light it back up. So I know that was a lot, but that's the formula I go through. It is a circular formula because people can go jump straight to L, or they can go jump straight to, or go back to, releasing old stories. There might be stories that pop up on session 4 that we have to go back to. So I always let clients know it's not a linear, journey. It's a circular journey. We can go back to whatever part we need to, and they can use those tools whenever they need to.
Yes. Yeah. And I think they all 4 of them have in common handing kind of the power back to the woman, right?
Yes.
It's because I think so much of, I think how we've gotten used to dealing with our health is reaching out to, expert Y or doctor, A, and looking for answers beyond ourselves, because as a society, we've been taught that like they're the experts. And it sounds like what you try to instill is so much of like the inner knowing, right? And
Right.
kind of if you're able to listen and tap into some of that, like you can actually become your own best advocate for just about anything, including wellness. And how you kind of talked earlier in what you were explaining about how, you can give somebody like a life coaching type of path, but if their, toxic overload is, high, they're not going to be able to get excited or have the energy to do all of the things that you're, kind of asking them to do. So it all kind of works full circle.
Yes.
But the one piece that I love is that you're kind of handing the power back to the client and letting them get curious about what this all kind of means and feels like for them, which again, I think is what has been taken out of, conventional care in so many regards. And I think too, we were talking before we started recording, a lot of coaches can kind of, feel like they need to be the one to save the client, right? It's kind of, I think, ingrained maybe in our desire to help and serve and why we go into these professions to begin with, right? But we're actually still doing the client somewhat of a disservice if we're not allowing them to step into the power from our education.
Right. Yeah. No, you see a huge shift when, like I said, the aha moment, those light bulbs go off. Like that is the exciting part about being a coach. I mean, I have lots of knowledge that I tell myself all day long. It's not that special to hear out loud, but in that moment, and it's a skill to learn as a coach, because there are so many moments I just want to like interject and say, no, this is right for you. No, actually, you probably shouldn't be eating that, or you shouldn't be doing this. And I can't do that as a coach. It's not my journey. I'm just here to hold the container for them and to help, guide the session along and ask the powerful questions that they might be asking themselves, but are too scared to answer. But when you have someone right in front of you, like a coach, asking you the question, you kind of have to answer. A lot of times they don't just say, no, I'm not going to answer that. They give me some kind of answer that I can work with and go to the next question. But in conventional medicine, I think we need all forms of medicine, but it needs to be a wellness team. We all need to be interacting. But in conventional medicine, they don't have the time to ask those questions. And so that's where a health coach comes into play. Like they can go get their recommendation from their doctor and then come to me and talk about it Like, how do they feel about this recommendation? Does it feel right in their body? How are they going to implement these recommendations in their lifestyle? Because when we leave the doctor, we are so confused. I know I am always confused. Now I have the skills of picking the right doctors. Where I go in, my doctors have a notepad and they want to write down everything I'm going to tell them, because I'll be like, well, I'm doing this, and this worked. But a lot of women don't have that power or confidence to speak up for what they believe is right for their mind and body.
Yes. Yeah. And I've had so many clients that I've asked questions to, and like you see them kind of look stunned and they're like, oh my God, no one's ever asked me that. Like they could be 45 and they're like, no one's ever asked me how I feel when I wake up in the morning, or like what excites me, and
Yeah.
so it's little things like that. And it's true. There's probably plenty of doctors out there who believe that those questions are important, or who would want to ask them. But it's the structure of the system that, they have 15 minutes for their appointments. And if they take longer than that, they're, not going to be able to stay on time or on target or meet whatever kind of deadlines they're supposed to. So for some, it might even be that they know those things are important, but the way that the system has been set up doesn't allow them to ask that stuff. But we can set up a container and a system where that stuff does matter and it can be talked about. And like you said, they can still get their recommendation from their doctor, but it can be that they troubleshoot it with somebody else and have an understanding of why they would do it, or maybe why they wouldn't do it, or what it would mean, to do one or the other, and how they kind of feel about it. Because the other thing too is I think so many women tend to process information in a little bit more of like, how does it feel kind of way, versus this like black and white, okay, like this is what makes sense as far as quantitatively. We have to kind of feel good about our choices and what we're stepping into as far as health is concerned. And so I think it's so much more than just take this, trust me, and I'll see you in 6 months.
Yes, exactly.
And so do you find that so I'm curious as far as like the age difference. So if you work with a 20-year-old and you're working with a 35-year-old, what age group tends to be more open, and maybe there's not a black and white answer, but which age group tends to be more open and softened to the process that kind of you like to go through? Is there a difference?
That's a funny question. Okay, so obviously it's individuality, like every client is different. But what I've seen is why I picked 25 to 35 is because in my experience, over 35, and I think we know this as women, we get kind of set in our ways. I think actually not just women, people get set in their ways as they get older. And so it was way more difficult for me to work with women that were on the in their 40s or 50s. And so now when it comes to that 35 range, I feel like in our 30s, like I'm 31 currently, and I was, blessed to have my 20s where I got to do so much self-discovery work and I got to learn about my body. Most women don't get that. I'm hoping to change that in my movement and all the movements that I know the health coaches are a part of. But in our 30s, I feel like we are open to different stuff because stuff starts happening in our bodies. Like, I feel like if you don't have control over it, then that's why I want to work with people before that, because I want to work with people before things go wrong. And I think that as we get older and older, things can become a bigger mess, a bigger problem. And then it starts to feel like we can't handle it. So women that are like 30 in their 30s, the women I've worked with, they're super open to new ideas because they feel like they're at their wits' end. Mm-hmm. They have been dealing with these issues for a while and they're getting too big. But they are a little, stressed out because they have so much going on. Women younger, in their 20s, this new generation actually is a little bit better about it. I think they're really interested in natural medicine and healthy habits, which is exciting. I think it's going to be like a really cool generation to work with. But They too, I think, because they have so much social media. And I mean, my generation, I had, a computer at home, but in my later years, I didn't have it from day one. But the kids who are younger have had it from day one. So they also have kind of a chaotic mind coming into it. Like I might speak about this type of ritual or this type of functional medicine protocol, and they want to instantly go to Siri or their phone and ask, online for what that means. And that, I don't know, that's a little bit frustrating as a coach because I'm like, ooh, don't go there yet. Like we want to stay to your intuition. If you have questions, let's talk about it together. Don't go to online right away. Or let me recommend some books to you to read. So I don't know if that answered your questions. I think there's pros and cons at every age, but I do believe that as a coach, you have the ability to open anybody up. And that might mean they're not ready at one point, but they might come back to you. I've had a client, I had someone that I talked to, probably like 4 years ago, and she wasn't ready then. And then she came back to me, later on. Because when you say something to people or you make some kind of mark on their world, they're not going to forget it. And so if they're not ready to speak with you then they might be ready 5 years from now, which is kind of cool as a coach to see, because it makes me know that even if I get a rejection, which I've gotten many rejections from people not wanting to work with me, if I get a rejection in the beginning, it was really hard to handle, or even that rejection of like my formula not working, like the person not be able to reach their goals. It was hard. I would put it on myself. And I would, get a little depressed about it. But now as a coach, I think I've gotten a lot better about knowing that everything I say and do does have an impact on individuals. And if they don't fully hear it in that moment, they're going to fully hear it at some point in their life. Kind of like I have a stepson who's 14. He's probably sick of me telling him health stuff, but I know someday down the road, he's going to appreciate. Just this morning, he asked me to make him a smoothie, and I have been asking him to drink a smoothie for 5 years. So it just took him going to high school and seeing someone else talk about it to want one. So the same thing with clients, like you might tell them something and they act like they don't care about it. And then who knows, maybe a month from then or a year from then, they want to know about it. So if I was going to tell a coach something and say, keep talking, keep sharing your wisdom, and keep trying to help people, even if they aren't fully ready at that moment. Do what you can and then let them come to you later. I believe that any age can change their life. So you can work with someone at 18, you can work with someone at 75, and there is always a behavior that you can help them implement or change as a coach. So pick the age group that feels best to you. Play around with it. Like I said, I've played around with many different ages. I've even worked with men before in the past. Someday down the road, I would love to. I work with foster kids at a charity locally here. And so someday I think that a health coach with kids aging out of the foster system would be amazing. So just that is to show you that, pick your niche. Like my niche is 25 to 35, but I would love to work with people from all ages at different times in my career, because each client can teach me something and I can teach them something.
Yes. Yeah. That's such a beautiful way to look at it. I always say it's never too late to be who you could have been or what you could have been.
Right.
And And I love what you said kind of about the, discrepancy there's probably pros and cons or, barriers to break through with any age group.
Right.
And so being able to kind of stay in your own power and knowledge that what you have to offer clients is incredibly valuable. And it really just matters, like you said, are they ready to go there? Right. And some people aren't. Some people just are, they need other things to get them started, but you're able to kind of be there as people need you. And I think it's in the whole foster. That's such a great idea. You have such great vision. Having kids aging out of foster care, And, 18, you mentioned like, why would you make an 18-year-old pick a major? We're still kids. I mean, an
Yeah.
18-year-old is still such where we have such still like child wonder about the world, yet we're
Mhm.
forced to like do all these adult like decision making steps. And if you kind of don't have a really good health background or the knowledge of how to take care of your body, how does your mind make those decisions? I mean, I
Right.
even know, if I eat crummy over a weekend, I wake up on Monday and I don't think as clearly. I don't have as much motivation. I don't, and for people that are doing that all the time, it's like they must be exhausted. They must be, really mentally just kind of like feeling down. So it's it all kind of comes full circle. And yeah, I think your vision is beautiful. If people are listening and they want to hear more or find out more about you, where are all the places that you show up, whether it be social media, websites, all of that?
Yeah. So my big platform I use is Instagram. I social media is a lot for me. I like to be off my phone, so I had to pick one. So if you want to get a hold of me, Instagram is the place to be. I am on there as Forming Her Wellness. So direct message me. I love to, as a coach, it can get kind of lonely when you own your own business. So anytime I get to talk to other coaches, it is like it makes the best day. So, and any coach that wants to collaborate, like I said, that idea I have for working with foster kids. Eventually, I'm going to need other health coaches on board for that. So I would just love to talk to any coach about any vision or idea that they have and see if we can collaborate. So Instagram and also my website is formingherwellness.com. And then also right now I have an exciting thing. I'm going to be starting retreats with one of my best friends who's a yoga instructor. So in November, we have our first one. It's called Powerful Self Wellness Retreat. Again, bringing that power back to people. So if you want to look at that, that's powerfulselfretreat.com. And they can check out kind of what a wellness retreat looks like, what a sales page looks like. We're in the beginning stages, but we're hoping to expand it, to different countries and just have fun connecting with other women and other people on the wellness, field.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much for sharing those. And thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This was such a great interview filled with so much information, and I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom with us.
Thanks. It was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ashley.